Hey everybody, how's it going? Today I'd like to follow up on a rant that I did yesterday on the iPhone 13. When you change the screen on the iPhone 13, you no longer get Face ID. There is no good faith argument that can be made on how this prevents you from getting an aftermarket screen, because even if you were to go to the Apple Store, buy an iPhone 13 from them, take that screen and put it in your phone, you still don't get Face ID. This is a way of keeping you from replacing it without going to the manufacturer. There's no way to make the argument that this is being done for security, because there is no good faith argument for it. Nobody's presented one. There's no argument being made as to how this makes the device better for the user, cheaper for the user. It's just a way of limiting your freedom. In order to make Face ID work, what you need to do is desolder a chip from the old screen, reball it by hand, and then solder it onto the new screen, unless you have access to a special tool that you only get access to if you join an incredibly restrictive program that doesn't allow you to do repairs as an independent repair shop or go to the Apple Store. Now, there are a lot of people who will say that independent repair shops use bad screens, as if that is a justification for making it impossible to retain this functionality without going back to the manufacturer. Strange argument, but let's say that I agree with it. Let's say I agree that repair shops should use better screens. Check it out. This is actually going to encourage repair shops to use worse screens. Sonny made this argument to me yesterday, and I did not include it in my video, and it's a good one. But this is actually going to end up with more repair shops using bad screens. And I'm going to propose that I think this is actually what Apple wants. So I have always prided myself on using good quality screens in my business. If you go back to before I ever had any idea that anybody would actually watch this crappy YouTube channel, if you arrange my videos from oldest to newest over here in the sort by button, you'll see that my first video I ever uploaded, A- versus A-grade LCDs. I am making the case for repair shops to choose grade A LCDs, and I'm explaining the difference between grade A and grade A-. Supply companies make 50 cents, $1, $2 when they sell a screen. So there is a lot of incentive structure for them to save $1 here or $1 there, even if it means they're buying grade A-. These are screens that are more likely to develop stuck pixels into the future, more likely to have a stuck pixel when you take it out of the box, or some sort of defect. Grade A LCDs are less likely to have that, but they cost more. If you're a repair shop, you're probably making $30, $50, $100, $200 per repair, so it doesn't really make sense for you to save $1 or $2 on your screen if it means a higher likelihood of that customer that you made $100 in profit on has a higher likelihood of coming back and saying, why is there a stuck pixel here? Why is there a defect here? Or if there is a chance of your technician that's getting paid $20 or $40 an hour having to do the job again. It makes sense to just buy the better screen. So what I was saying in this video is that my supply company, which sells screens, sells grade A screens, not A-. Even though I'd make more money as a supply company selling A-, the economically viable thing to do is to sell the crappier screen and just apologize when 0.1% of the customers get one with an issue. I use grade A because I also just so happen to run a repair shop, which is where a majority or a bulk of our profit comes from, not the supply company. I've always prided myself on using good screens and good parts, and I know many companies that do. And what Apple is doing here is actually ingenious for them if they want to fight right to repair and make independent repair shops look bad in the eyes of their customers, because what they're going to do is they're going to incentivize repair shops to use crappier screens. Let me explain. I'm going to do this with a very highly advanced spreadsheet, so try to follow along. So if you take a look at my beautiful, highly advanced spreadsheet over here, let's say that a customer is willing to spend $80 on a repair. As I explained in a recent video, for the most part, customers are willing to spend a certain percentage of what the device is worth in the used market. Let's just say for a particular device, that's $80. So let's say that a good iPhone screen is $40 and that you're charging $40 in labor for the job. If you run a business and you have a store, rent, workman's comp, insurance, all that other stuff, it's sensible to make $40 in an iPhone screen repair. So you make $80 total. $80 is the total cost, $40 for labor, $40 for the part. Now, let's say that Apple then requires, in order for you to retain Face ID, that you have to desolder a chip, reball it by hand without breaking it, and solder it on to the new screen. This requires a much higher skill set. It's also going to require a lot more time. So this requires an employee that is paid more money per hour, but it also requires more time out of that hour. So let's say that the cost of the labor, let's just say that goes up to $65. Well, now the total is $105, and your customer is going to walk out of the store because they think you're overpriced. A win for Apple, because now independent repair is viewed as, quote, overpriced or price gouging. Or what they could do is they could decide that they are going to lower the cost of the part. Let's say they use a shittier part. Very, very doable thing. Very easy way to cut costs. Now you're back to the $80, which is what on average you can charge without people getting mad at you. But now you're giving the customer a shit screen, and the customer is going to be mad because they're getting a shittier screen. Or what you can do is you can pretty much do the exact same thing you were doing before, but now you have to tell the customer that they will not have Face ID because you're not going to be transferring the chip from the old screen to the new screen. So either A, you charge the customer more money, B, you use a crappier part, or C, the customer loses functionality, whereas they wouldn't have lost functionality before. Now, if Apple wants to wage a war on independent repair shops and independent repair in general, if they are telling you as a $1 or $2 trillion company, independent repair is bad, don't use them, that might not work on a lot of people. Admittedly, even if I tell you something, or your friend, somebody just comes up to you and says, this group is bad, these people are bad, the first thing that's going to come to mind for a lot of people is healthy skepticism. Why are they telling me this? What is their ideological motivation for telling me that? What is their economic motivation for telling me that? What is their bias? I want to know why it is that you believe that this group is bad. What should I know about you? They're going to be skeptical. If Apple just comes out the gate and says independent repair sucks, that's hard. However, if they just simply create the circumstances and create the ecosystem for their own customers to have a bad experience with independent repair, then it's not Apple telling them to come to the conclusion that independent repair is bad. Rather, Apple's own customers will come to the conclusion that independent repair is bad from their own bad experiences. And that is fucking genius, because it distances Apple from the customer coming to the conclusion that independent repair is bad. I didn't think that because it said it in the manual, because Tim Cook told me. I thought that because I actually had a bad experience with independent repair. Now, if you create the circumstances to incentivize independent repair shops around the country to cut their parts costs in order to be able to charge what they did before and not be seen as a ripoff, then you're going to have more repair shops on average using parts that are of lower quality, whereas this incentive would not have existed for as many shops before. Are you going to have repair shops that go on eBay, sort by lowest price, and buy the shittiest screen they can? Sure. There's always going to be someone out there on a race to the bottom, happy to line his pockets by providing you with shit. That's been true for pretty much the history of man. But you are going to have people out there that actually took pride in providing good parts to their customers. And this is going to put pressure on them to rethink their business model, to rethink what they're doing, to rethink where their value add is if they are going to remain economically viable. Apple is putting a pressure point by having this policy, and it's absolutely genius, because what it does is it distances themselves from saying independent repair sucks. They're just going to engineer their device and engineer the entire ecosystem so that independent repair is screwed and stuck between a rock and a hard place, forced to choose between taking away the functionality of your device, price gouging you, or giving you a shittier part. And that's kind of genius on Apple's part, because if you go to the Apple store, they don't need to pay somebody who knows what they're doing. They could pay any dumbass that doesn't even know, that let's say pin 1 is backlight on an A1398 MacBook, and literally the first place you look when there's no backlight on the screen after a user claims that they opened it themselves. Even somebody who's completely clueless can plug the screen into the machine, press the button, have the machine reprogram it for them so there's no soldering necessary, and be able to offer a more cost-effective repair than what you will get at an independent repair shop. By artificially increasing the labor costs at the independent repair shop, you're going to force them to either, again, do rushed work, use a shittier part. Fucking genius, man. It really is. Like, I would admire this creative evil genius if it wasn't for the fact that it was being targeted at destroying my industry. And a lot of people will say that independent repair shops use crappy parts. They use bad parts. They use bad parts. Well, good on you for not discouraging Apple from having a policy that will incentivize people to use even cheaper parts. This policy of requiring an experienced micro soldering technician to do a screen repair is going to incentivize repair shops to decrease their parts cost because you've now increased their labor cost. Now, if we were talking about actual progress, I wouldn't mind. An A1181 MacBook requires you replace an inverter board, which is about this big, in order to restore a backlight when the backlight no longer works on the screen. An A1466 MacBook Air requires that you replace a micro BGA chip that's about half the size of my pinky fingernail. This requires a lot more skill. However, it allows you to have a device that's much slimmer, because a chip that's half the size of my pinky fingernail takes up much less space than an inverter board that's half the size of my Android phone. How is the iPhone 13 superior to what it would have been had they not locked Face ID to this chip on the screen? How does it benefit the end user? Monetarily, security-wise, functionality-wise, anything. It doesn't. It has no good reason other than making it more difficult to repair the device, which will then be passed on to the end consumer in the form of an increased cost only outside of Apple, or in crappier parts, again, only outside of Apple. Fucking genius. They are turning customers against independent repair by putting independent repair in a situation where they're going to suck. I guess it's fucking evil genius in my opinion. So if you're one of those people that's really bothered by the fact that there are independents out there that don't use the best parts, but you simultaneously support this policy that Apple has, you don't care about that. You're being a fanboy. There's no other way to put it. You're just being a fanboy, because this policy is going to result in crappier screens being used in iPhones across the country, because there's now a greater economic incentive to use shittier parts. Good effing job. Great job. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. I'll see you all in the next video.
You will not be posting this to your channel.
I can't?
No.